The Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication at Arizona State University is honored to be a supporter of Indian Country Today. ASU offers the only online undergraduate digital media literacy degree, teaching students how to recognize and combat inaccuracies on all platforms. They are using cutting-edge tools and tactics to separate fact from fiction in a digital world overloaded with misinformation. Learn more at cronkite.asu.edu.
This is Indian Country Today.
Esquili, yes, thank you for joining us. I'm Patty Thalohungva. Here are the headlines from Indian Country Today. Some residents of the San Carlos Apache tribe in eastern Arizona are being evacuated due to a fast-burning brush fire. The Mescal fire started a week ago, but on Saturday the winds picked up, and overnight the fire went from 8,000 acres to 38,000 acres. These photos are from the tribal chairman's Facebook page. Chairman Terry Rambler also said Oak Flat, an area sacred to the Apache, was also in danger. By Monday morning, the fire was at more than 50,000 acres and is just 8% contained. More than 600 firefighters are on the scene. Fire officials say hot, dry, windy conditions and low humidity have fueled the fire. The temperature is near 100 degrees. The San Carlos Apache chairman also asked for prayers for all firefighters. There is another fire 30 miles to the west that's burned approximately 41,000 acres. The Telegraph fire has closed the main highway from Globe to Phoenix, Arizona. In Nevada, tribal citizens are celebrating 3 new laws that will bring positive changes to education and history. The signing took place at the former Stuart Indian School. It was one of many government-run boarding schools established in the late 1800s. Governor Steve Sisolak signed the bills on Friday. One bill will grant free college tuition to Native students who are enrolled or descended from tribes in Nevada to all Nevada colleges and universities. Another will end the use of Native mascots in public schools, K through 12. The third bill will end the so-called sundown sirens. These sirens were used historically as a signal to people of color to leave town by the time the sun set. There are 20 federally recognized tribes in the state. The U.S. Army is returning the remains of 10 Native American children to their families. The children were students at Carlisle Indian Industrial School in Pennsylvania between 1880 and 1910. Aleut family members will bring home the remains of one child to St. Paul Island in Alaska. And Rosebud, Lakota citizens will be bringing the remains of 9 children back to South Dakota. Carlisle was the first U.S. government boarding school, and it was designed to forcibly assimilate Native American children. The schools housed more than 10,000 children when it was open. Harsh conditions at the school sometimes led to disease and death. More than 180 children are buried in the cemetery there. The repatriation process is scheduled to begin June 14th and is expected to last about a month. Some northern Arapahoes in Wyoming are getting help with past due rent. The tribe's housing department is distributing $2.6 million to renters who've been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. As Sonavi Spoonhunter reports, the tribe is also helping non-natives with this emergency rental assistance program.
We launched March 15th, and we have helped 320 applicants. In that amount, we have assisted about $780,000 in funds.
The tribe was the first governmental organization in Wyoming to offer renters this funding. It has allowed them to serve tribal and non-tribal renters who live in Fremont County and help tribal members who live out of state. Lynette Grable, the director of the program, created an online application through Google Docs, giving applicants an option to submit directly from their phone. Once received, she and her team process the applications. Stefan Littleshield serves as the first point of contact for people looking for rental assistance.
Being an intake specialist is trying to meet people where they're at, trying to meet them halfway. And so we can do home visits for people who, maybe don't have a car, who aren't able to do the paperwork on their own.
Grable notes that the tribe has exceeded its monthly target goal. This is significant because they will need to spend 50% of the allotted federal funds by September in order for the program to continue. Besides helping tribal citizens with back rent, the program also allows them extra funds for future payments.
Our program assists with 3 months prospective rent going forward. So it gives the family time to not only recover from whatever delinquency they had, but it gives them time, a little cushion to kind of get back on their feet.
The next group expected to receive help are homeowners. That program is pending federal approval. In Ethity, Wyoming, Snubbie Spoonhunter, Indian Country Today.
And those are the headlines from Indian Country Today. I'm Patty Thalahungva. Natives in Nevada are now eligible for free college tuition.
Plus, they can now stay in the cities after dark. We'll explain when we come back. Three new laws in Nevada are bringing welcome change for tribal citizens that live there. One bill will grant free college tuition to Native students. Another will end the use of Native mascots, and a third will end the so-called sundown sirens, which were used historically to signal all people of color to leave the town after dark. Governor Steve Sisolak signed all three bills into law at the historic government-run Stuart Indian School, which was open for some 90 years. Joining us today to talk about these bills and the impact on Nevada citizens is Stacey Montooth. She's the Executive Director of the Nevada Indian Commission. Welcome, Stacey.
Good morning. Thank you for having me on your show.
So much news in one day. Let's start by talking about the historical one. What is this sundown siren and how did it come about and why is it so important?
That's a great question, Mark. Believe you me, I have been baffled that in 2021, there are still municipalities. In fact, the city of Minden is just about 30 minutes from where I'm sitting. That municipality still sounds a siren every day at 6 o'clock. Now, historically, that area had such a practice in order to tell the indigenous people of the area, in this case, it's the Washishishu, the Washoe people, that was their indicator that they had to leave town, that by the time the sun set, all people of color, and specifically the Indian people, had to be out of town. There's been so much work done in, I would say, the last 50 years to try to alleviate this historical trauma. As you can imagine, you know, our elders heard this as small children and they continue to hear it today, even though the leadership in the city of Minden claims that they don't intend it to be any kind of an indicator for Indian people.
Has this bill become a teaching moment for the rest of the state to talk about people of the legacy of Nevada and tribal communities there?
I absolutely think it is. As the executive director of the Nevada Indian Commission, my charge is to improve the quality of life for the 27 tribal nations, bands, and colonies, as well as the 50,000 urban Indians who make Nevada their second home. And for me, the best method for improving the quality of life is education. And often that means reaching non-Indigenous people. We were absolutely overwhelmed at the outpouring of support for AB 88, which was sponsored actually by a legislator from Southern Nevada. Howard Watts actually represents a district in Las Vegas. Now, I know you're in Arizona and similarly have a large state, so we're talking about a 7-hour drive from where this law, the idea for this bill draft request was initiated to, again, about a 7-hour drive away from where the sirens were taking place. So this was an issue that all Nevadans were talking about.
Speaking of education, one of the other bills addresses mascots in public education. A lot of states are dealing with this issue. What's the Nevada approach to this?
Thank you for asking, Mark. Currently, we believe that there are 4 public schools, a junior high and 3 high schools, within the state of Nevada which use Native American imagery, likeness, sometimes even, pseudo pan-Indianist songs to promote their athletic department. And so what the state of Nevada has done, again, Assemblyman Watts from Las Vegas, he wrote a law which requires any public school which has a mascot that uses Native imagery to have a transition plan so that that school can move from using, our culture as a way to make certain that they can move forward and change all of their monikers, their language, their word marks. Now, I think what's different about what's happening is in Nevada is we also have a provision in the law which requires that the school district have consultation with the appropriate tribal nation that is based on proximity. And so in a nutshell, what the lawmakers in Nevada have done is tell the school organizers that they have to have permission to continue using that Native American mascot.
In so many cases, we've seen this as a polarizing event. By having a transition plan, does it make it more likely that there'll be a discourse back and forth and maybe not everyone will come on board, but at least consensus?
Certainly that's the hope. I know that our friends at NCAI, even in Indian Health Service, have done just an inordinary amount of studies about the psychological impacts, again, more intergenerational trauma that Native mascots have. It's interesting to me in my non-scientific research, I think that some of our tribal citizens feel that we have bigger fish to fry, right? I got through that high school and we were called the Indians and I'm fine. So today's generation might as well, endure it as well. So sometimes I think it's not necessarily just a Native issue, but some of our own people, again, feel like it's maybe not a priority, and that will offer an opportunity, that consultation, to have dialogue and hopefully impact everybody who's at the table.
As we talk about the third bill, I want to mention that this all was celebrated at the Stuart Indian School. Maybe tell us about that.
Well, I'm happy to do that, Mark. I'm actually virtually speaking to you from the historic Stuart Indian School. This is a campus that was operated for 90 years, opened in 1890 on the outskirts of Carson City, the capital here in Nevada. As you know, it was a federal policy to educate our relatives. And so there's not a Paiute, a Shoshone, or a Washoe people in this area who wasn't directly impacted by the operation of this boarding school. And just as was the case nationwide, when the school opened, they went with this, motto, kill the Indian, save the man. The schools were based on a military model. It was extremely harsh. Our students had to wear uniforms. Their hair was cut. They were segregated by their gender. So having a bill signing ceremony, which now completely changes the dynamic for the educational future of our citizens, has a little bit of irony in it, because this exact location is where the federal government tried to take the Indian out of our relatives, including my 95-year-old grandmother.
Well, and part of that new opportunity is higher education. So let's talk about the third bill that opens up new higher education opportunities.
Absolutely. So we had this amazing educator, Assemblywoman Natha Anderson, who taught in a lot of public schools in Northern Nevada and always had an affinity for the Native American students. And she believed strongly and was really quite confounded that our Native American students couldn't attend the Nevada system of higher education without costs. As you know, Mark, many of the country's colleges and universities, not only were they built on native land, but here in our state, the University of Nevada is a land grant institution. So the property where the University of Nevada is operated from is the home of the Nui, the Numa, the Paiute and the Shoshone people of this land. And so even though this assemblywoman was a freshman, it was her first term, even though we're in the midst of a pandemic and money is tight, with a lot of different people involved, from activists to educators to tribal chairs, we were able to convince the elected leadership of the Nevada legislature that this opportunity to attend college or university tuition free is in fact a type of reparation for the first caretakers of this land.
Well, and in addition to reparation, you look at the Great Basin as a region, and this is a magnet. This is going to bring talent to Nevada in ways that benefit the state, not just tribal communities.
Absolutely, Mark. I have to tell you, when this first became debated, as you're aware, there were hearings held about this potential law, and I was really disheartened when our leadership talked about the cost. How much is this going to cost? You know, how many students are going to, you know, be using the system to get an education? And I felt so strongly that we shouldn't have been talking about money. This is an investment. Chairman Arlen Melendez from the Reno Sparks Indian Colony, he was a co-presenter on this bill, and he eloquently told the leadership that what's good for Indian country is good for the state of Nevada. And you are absolutely right. The investment in education will be not only amazing for our communities, but for the whole state.
Stacey Montooth, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you.
And we'll be right back. $1 billion is being allocated for broadband in Indian country. Kolby KickingWoman spoke with Secretary of Commerce Gina Raimondo about the program and how tribes can apply.
Today, I'm speaking with Secretary of Commerce Gina Raimondo about $1 billion set aside for tribes to expand broadband connectivity in Indian country through the Tribal Broadband Connectivity Program administered by the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, which was created by the Consolidated Appropriations Act 2021. Welcome, Secretary. Thank you for speaking with me today.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So early in the Biden administration, the president signed a presidential memorandum calling for meaningful, robust tribal consultation across governmental agencies. 13 hours of tribal consultation was conducted for this program. Do you believe 13 hours was sufficient, and what did you learn from tribal leaders?
Thank you for asking that. So as you say, we engaged in meaningful, robust tribal consultation to get to this point. And I also, about a month ago, convened with a group of leaders from Navajo Nation so I could personally hear from them. And I would say, yes, it was robust, it was significant, but I would also say this is just the beginning. So the nature of this initiative is that we, my department, is today launching a 90-day process for applications. And we are inviting folks to reach out to us so we can provide technical assistance. So certain, communities will be maybe better positioned immediately to apply for this. Others may not. They may need additional help, additional technical assistance. And so we are totally committed to providing that assistance, helping people prepare their applications. We're totally committed to make sure that each of the recognized tribes receives some funding. And so I think like the 13 hours was just the beginning. And at the end of these 90 days, I suspect it'll be many, 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 many more hours if we do our job right.
Absolutely. Can you talk about how the program got to the $1 billion number? I saw that each federally recognized tribe can be allocated up to $500,000. How far will $500,000 go? As I'm sure you're aware, many tribes are in remote areas, others have large land bases, and some both.
Great question. So this is $1 billion. It was provided by Congress. So it was set out in the law that that was the amount. This is, though, just the beginning. I mean, President Biden's jobs package, which he has before Congress now, calls for $100 billion, which is the amount that we believe is necessary to make sure that every American has access to high-speed, quality broadband. This is a down payment on that. This is $1 billion. 25% of the billion will be used exactly as you said, so that every single recognized tribe will receive up to $500,000. However, we encourage all of the tribes to also apply for more money. And those grants will probably be much larger. And they can be, it's not enough. I'm not going to pretend it's enough. By the way, half of households on tribal lands don't have access to broadband, which is frankly heartbreaking. So there's just so much work to be done, and this is the beginning, and we just encourage everybody to come forward in the next 90 days to participate in the process.
Yeah, and funding for broadband stretches across multiple agencies. How will this money help these government agencies work best together and more efficiently in addressing these broadband issues in Indian country?
So this is something that I know a lot about, having just spent 6 years as the governor of Rhode Island. And by the way, we have the Narragansett Indian tribe in Rhode Island. The entire focus of this initiative, the way that my team and I have designed it, is so that it will be flexible and led by the community. Every community has different needs. In some places, it's laying fiber. In other places, it's digital literacy. In other places, it just might be helping folks pay the bills. There may be broadband, but it's too expensive. So the money, the way we're structuring this, is purposefully flexible so that the individual community can come forward and say, this is actually what we need. We need, satellites and also a $500 subsidy to each household so they can pay the one-time $500 to hook up their home. So we are, and I say I learned that as governor because it's the people on the ground in the community who know the needs of that community, and they're different. The tribal lands in Connecticut and Rhode Island have very different needs than in Arizona and New Mexico and very rural areas. So the whole point of it is allow it to be flexible, let the communities lead, and kind of you tell us what's necessary.
Absolutely, and to that point about letting the people lead, as far as applications, will this money be going to tribes, and people working on the ground, or will it go to organizations that can, fund projects and kind of come into tribal communities? How will that work?
Flexible, either or. It can go to government entities, nonprofits, for-profits. That's why, as I said, 25% of the billion is up to $500,000 for every single federally recognized tribe will get something. The bulk of the money is in a competitive program. So it's up to the community to put together a proposal that's competitive. And again, we want to help. And then again, you tell us, but it could go to government, nonprofit, for-profit, schools, as I said, workforce training, digital literacy, subsidies to individuals to help pay flexible on purpose, designed to be flexible on purpose.
Absolutely, and you spoke this as a down payment. You know, what comes next after this initial 90 days and this first $1 billion?
Well, I really hope that Congress does its job and passes the president's jobs package. As I said, this is a down payment, a small down payment. You know, candidly, we think it's significant, and every tribe will receive a good deal of money, but it is not enough. If 50% of households have broadband, that pretty much means the majority don't. It means the majority of kids didn't get to go to school last year. And so the president's calling for a $100 billion investment. That's what he has before Congress now. And that's what we believe is necessary to make sure every American, no matter where they live, has access to affordable high-speed broadband. So the next step is continue to work with Congress to make sure they get it done.
Thank you, Kolby, for that interview with the Commerce Secretary. And that's a slice of our Indigenous world. Join us again tomorrow and online at IndianCountryToday.com. Thank you for watching. I'm Mark Trahan.
Sometimes you got to take a stand just because you know you can. Oh, you got to run, you got to run. This is Indian Country Today.